We're joined by a UFO journalist, Tony Topping, who's going to discuss with us these new US Navy guidelines for reporting UFOs. Tony, thanks ever so much for joining us.
Hey, you're all right, Martin. Good evening to you. How chuffed I am to speak to you, as I used to listen to you up in Leeds, my son.
Oh, my goodness.
I did, yes. Yeah, a bit of a fan. Oh, hello, and good morning to you.
Good morning to you, too, and bless you for coming on. Do appreciate it. First of all, how do you react to this Dr. Chi, who's saying that aliens are already here and interbreeding with humans? What's your view on that?
Well, that's a very complex statement that he's making there, a very deep one, and the fact of the matter is that he could be onto something. He's not cold, he's hot on that one. This is due to the myriad of reportings that we get in South America. For example, in South America, there was a man who was abducted by extraterrestrials, and he was left with an imprint on a bed sheet. And when the material was analysed, the fibres were analysed, because the imprint of him was there on the bed sheet. One half of the fibre was subjected to cold heat, and the other half of the fibre was subjected to extreme temperature, giving an analysis that there was some extremely advanced heating technology being used on the fabric that we don't have. So you've kind of like got this kind of scenario going on where people are indeed abducted, people are indeed liaising with these ETs, especially in South America, for example, where it appears to be quite a routine thing. And even the Russian military, for example, one of their generals, a General Savin, sat in front of Pravda journalists, telling them that his unit had liaison with extraterrestrials and were exchanging medical information in Pravda. Yeah.
So is this all being kept secret from? I mean, is there a huge conspiracy so that we, apart from this thing that was in the Times this morning, apart from that, are we being kept in the dark about all this?
Yes, we are being kept in the dark, and they may be. I mean, they may be legitimate security reasons for that. By the military, especially the navies, for example, from the Russian Navy to the US Navy, they all have studied UFOs, and there could well be something like that. The British studied something under Project Condign. It was known as, what was it now? UAP in the Air Defence Region, it was known as, roughly. That was the title, and the MOD spent a lot of money on analysing UFO phenomena, as did the Pentagon under something called the Advanced Aviation, Advanced Aviation Threat Program, AATIP. So they spent about 25 million on it. They're not spending that money on nothing, I assure you, Martin.
Okay, well, I'm just looking at this report about the new US Navy guidelines for reporting UFOs, and it says here it's an important, welcome step forward towards destigmatizing UFOs. So from that, I take it the fact that you might in the past have said, oh, it's just some nutter in a trailer park in Utah who's saying...
This is absolutely it, matey. And the thing is that I can get labelled with the nutter in the trailer park label very easily, but I don't. The media have actually been very good to me, as your radio station has. There have been a number of reports of unauthorised and or unidentified aircraft entering various military-controlled ranges and designated airspace in recent years. Hence the Navy, the US Navy, kind of like instigating this change of reporting guidelines and infrastructure. I think that Luis Elizondo, who was the man behind AATIP, the Advanced Aviation Threat Program, Identification Program, should I say. He came out with this legitimate point that if you are busy in an airport and see something, you are supposed to say something. And he also said, but with our own military members, it's kind of the opposite. If you do see something, you don't say something. Yeah. And so he then added that because these mysterious craft don't have a tail number or a flag, in some cases not even a tail, it's not good. And what happens in 5 years if it turns out that they are extremely advanced Russian aircraft? That was the thing he was pointing out on this. So there's a culture change in the military about reporting all this. I don't think the Navy is suggesting that their personnel are speaking to little green men. I just think the Navy the US Navy especially, are sharpening up on their observation of all this because of something known as the Tic Tac incident, where the US Nimitz carrier group, can't remember the precise date, maybe about 2004, no, 2017 it was, some of their fighters were engaging UFOs in the Pacific, and these UFOs were coming in at tremendous speed on radar and so on and so forth. So the Navy have done this actual reporting structure. Believe it or not, Martin, the Russians probably have a similar reporting structure as well.
Is there any sort of is there any point at which they combine, and the because if you look at obviously geopolitically the Americans and the Russians have a completely different set of interests, but when it comes to looking beyond that, you would think they have common interests. Humanity.
You would, and there's, I've no wish to obviously panic people, but for example, there was an incident, so it is rumoured, I've got to say, so it is rumoured, we only have hearsay on this, but it's an interesting point for your listeners, by a researcher who passed over called Tony Dodd, who did something about UFOs in the Atlantic. It is rumoured that Russia and NATO navies came together tracking UFOs because of the situation going on where these UFOs were at speed and cutting into fishing nets, and there was quite a hoo-ha about that. I know I have sources who have been in the Navy, for example, who have indicated to me that they have had sonar returns of unidentified submersible objects known as USO travelling at tremendous speed underwater at speeds that the Russians and Americans do not have. And as Ronald Reagan rightly said, what happened if we faced a common enemy? We'd have to unite as one if that threat was alien, you see. Yeah. Not that it is, I'm not saying it is, but that's the kind of situation. So the military are certainly analysing all this, and there's a very big culture change in the reporting of it. It's now known as UAP and UFOs, been a big change in culture. I think really we have Luis Elizondo to thank for that, though, when he appeared on CNN to talk about all this. So somebody like me has him to thank for that kind of thing. It's pretty good.
And do you have a vision in your own mind of what extraterrestrials? I mean, you've obviously seen all the movies, as I have, going way back. Yeah. Do you have a vision of what you think an extraterrestrial might look like? I mean, we all see them as sort of crypto-humans.
It's interesting to note, Martin. Very good question, actually. It's interesting to note, Martin. I'll give you an example. You can go to my website if you wish me to mention what that is, and it can tell you. Okay. Well, I'm TonyToppingUFOs.com, and on that site are my experiences with UFOs. The listeners know me on Talk Radio. I've been on and off Talk Radio for years talking about it, so that they know that my experiences are quite legit. This is an observation. There was a man called Robert Dean, Master Sergeant Robert Dean, who worked at NATO HQ. And he came out with this interesting thing that NATO had done something called the assessment, where they had looked at the UFO phenomena. Once again, we have no proof, but he made an interesting observation, and it was this: something bothered the military a great deal, and it was that aliens look like us and we look like them, and that's very true. There's like a grand design code in operation: 2 arms, 2 legs, and a head, that kind of thing. They're not like little green men. They do look like us. The reports in Brazil, for example, reports in Peru, reports by the Zulu. The Zulu, in fact, it's interesting, Martin, were the first people to set eyes on blonde, blue-eyed people from the stars above in their folklore, you see. And they called them, was it Nazugu or Wazugu or Wazongo, something like that anyway, is what they call it. They give it a specific name. And the thing is that when they met the European male, they thought that they were from the stars as well, because the first people they had met were from the stars. Yeah,
well, that's folk. Yeah, I was going to say that's folklore. It doesn't prove anything, does it really? But it's interesting to note. And also interesting to note, towards the end of the last century, apparently there were numerous reports in Scotland of black triangles, which later turned out to be the US testing the new stealth fighter without actually telling the UK they were doing it. Is it not possible that a lot of the things that we think are UFOs are these sort of tests that are taking place in secret?
Yes, they are. But as Nick Pope has rightly said, the MOD man Nick Pope has rightly said, the MOD have classified areas where they fly classified gear. They don't fly over populated areas. If you look at what's known as the Belgium UFO triangle incident, the head of the Belgian Air Force, Wilfried de Boer, I think he was called, indicated in public that his Air Force were tracking UFOs at tremendous speed. His F-16s could not keep up with them, and he believed that they were from elsewhere, that they were not human, and they were actually from elsewhere. So you've got repeated quotes from heads of Air Force, political leaders, military people, key military figures, saying that there's something going on with the UFO phenomenon that would indicate that there is existence of life out there, and we are not alone.
Right.
And this theme seems to be repeatedly surfacing.
And there's going to be more of that, I assume, with the new guidelines, which is, I suppose, the news story in all this.
Yes.
Mark, my producer, asks me, do you think that Foo Fighters, which I thought they were a group, I didn't realise, but do you think that Foo Fighters were aliens or Nazi experimental aircraft? Which, as I say, I thought they were a pop group, but there you go.
Yes, okay. For that, Foo Fighters, that's a good question. I believe, no, they were not a product of Nazi technology. The Nazi technology was a different ball game altogether, and there were some very key players involved in that as well. They used psychics, did the Nazis, to build up a picture of the UFO phenomena. And that's a story as well, Martin, if ever there was one. So no, I don't believe so. I believe that these Foo Fighters that we see are an example of a technology that we don't understand from somewhere else. Plasma related.
Right. Years ago, I mean, it's all very interesting. I mean, years ago, Tony, did I interview you on Radio Leeds? Have we spoken before?
No, mate, you didn't. It's just I used to listen to you quite a lot. You know, I used to enjoy listening to you on Radio Leeds. No, I've never been on Radio Leeds for an interview with you, Martin. No.
Right. I just wondered, because often when I was speaking to sort of people who are into, I don't know, cryptozoology or UFOs and things, I say, you must accept that, and I just wondered, I didn't want to ask you the same question I asked you on Radio Leeds, but if I had interviewed you there, I would have asked you, how do you react when people say, well, you're as mad as a mongoose, or you're
I get it all the time.
Well, I thought you would.
Hey, you've got to have a steel back in this game, a steel back, because there again, on saying that, you know, if I'm getting that coming back at me, then I'm not quite doing my job correctly, because I'm here to provoke people's interest, to make them look into it further, to perhaps support other people in the field who have got a military or intelligence background. So I have to be a bit savvy. But yeah, you have to have a steel back, mate, because you can get ridiculed. You do. But for me, luckily, the media have been very good to me. I can't fault them.
No, and presumably, as I say, we'll get more and more of these stories. And as you say, though, even if you don't altogether swallow everything, you still got to be interested in them. I mean, and presumably you write your stuff for various specialist journals, of which there are loads.
Yes, I do. I write for an Australian magazine. I'm on radio and TV quite a lot talking about it. And when you put yourself out there, Martin, you have to expect a bit of ridicule, and you have to be a good sport with it as well. You know what I'm saying? You got to take a laugh with it, because it can. There's a chortle factor to it, of course there is, and I understand that. But when you get into the nitty gritty and you really know your stuff, and you can provoke a viewer's or listener's interest, then my job, I think, is done. You know what I'm saying? Then I'm doing my job.
Brilliant, Tony. Thanks ever so much. Do appreciate you staying up nice and late to talk to us. And no doubt we'll talk again sometime. Thanks a lot, Tony.
Thank you very much, Martin. Cheers now. Bye-bye.
All the best. There he was, Tony Topping, UFO journalist.